There's sometimes you look back and you think, damn it, why didn't I do this? And I was really sad not to be with Miles van der Molen. He invited me to join him and I suppose his 1,000 closest friends for the 20th anniversary of CemAir. It's been a heck of a story, and we'll touch on a little bit of that today with Miles. He's the chief executive and founder of CemAir. We also have an interesting situation that's happened here. CemAir has got into bed with South African Airways. Who would have thought? We'll talk about the 20th anniversary in just a moment or a little bit later, Miles. But man, this story that when I read it, I thought, no, come on, this can't be true. Here we have one of the feistiest, most outspoken, most independent, most freedom-loving entrepreneurs that I know, running an airline that's always been under the yoke of state subsidization through SAA, and now you're their partner. Hey, man, there's a story there somewhere.
It's a fairly standard airline commercial partnership that we have with SAA. The first run on the ladder was a couple of years ago. We entered an interline relationship with them, and we've moved to a co-chair. We believe strategically it's a great move. SAA has done a lot to right the ship. It's very commendable what they've achieved. And they have taken a pragmatic approach, which is growing through partnerships. It's a non-equity partnership, so it really is just working together. The first level of the co-chair is simply putting each other's codes on flights, and then at some point we'll look at schedule alignment and growth thereafter. But we believe SAA's future is rosy, and it's seen a lot of stability with Professor Lamola now being in the seat for multiple years. A lot of the misgivings people had about them before, that they are starting to fix, so that should be noted.
You say that as though we should understand co-chair. What does co-chair mean?
So co-chair, there's multiple levels of commercial partnerships that are standard airline practice around the world. The co-chair is where our aircraft will carry multiple airlines' codes with its flights. So it'll be a CemAir flight number, it'll be a SAA flight number, and shortly, hopefully, we'll be doing a co-chair with Emirates, and it'll be an Emirates code on exactly the same aircraft. So one flight is operated in the eyes of the ticket holder by multiple airlines and carries multiple codes. But obviously, regulatory-wise, there's a single operator behind and a single aircraft behind. And that's what we've entered into with SAA.
So what does it really mean? Because you've kind of made the semigration points your own. You've really got big into those areas, George, Hoedspruit, Plettenberg Bay, for instance. Are SAA going to be putting their customers onto those flights and then you putting your customers onto any of their flights?
Exactly. So simply put, you can go onto our website and you can book an SAA flight and vice versa. So our ticket stock is available through their distribution system and theirs through ours. We will have in due course some schedule alignment. For example, the equipment they operate, the A320s are far more effective on a route like Joburg, Cape Town. And our route network to smaller centres, the A320 wouldn't be as effective on. So we can get operational efficiencies by operating where it makes sense and leaning on our partners where it makes sense too. So it's a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of a.
Miles, does that mean that if I book my CemAir flight to Johannesburg from Cape Town, I might end up on a SAA aeroplane rather than one of yours?
Correct. That's exactly what it means. So on a CemAir ticket, you can end up on an SAA actual flight, yeah.
But I like flying on your planes. I like your casual professionalism. Is there any way that I can ensure that I don't end up on a SAA flight?
Yes, absolutely. If you look in the details of the ticket, it will tell you who the operating carrier is and what aircraft you'll be flying. So on the face of it has the SAA flight number, but the details behind do make it very clear to the purchasing customer exactly who they'll actually be flying with and what aircraft they'll be on. So it is transparent if somebody wants to see the detail, but it's convenient if somebody simply wants a seat booked.
But I suppose it makes a lot of economic sense, and at some point in time, you would be taking certain of your aircraft that wouldn't have been full on that Joburg Cape Town route off, so that your customers can fly via SAA in future. Is that sense? Am I understanding this properly?
It's absolutely our intention that we will either on a weekly seasonal basis or a longer term seasonal basis, make sure that we ride match the required capacity with the aircraft type being operated with our partner. So on peak days, it makes sense for them to operate the flight. On quiet days, it might make sense to us for us to operate a flight, but we can optimize by looking at historical data and projecting forward and working out what would be the best solution for a future date.
So there could be, in the opposite case then, some SAA customers who book with SAA who actually fly from Johannesburg to Cape Town with you.
Correct. That's exactly how that'll work.
But what is the intention, though? Is it that you get to service the semigration routes? I guess there's probably a better word for it, but that kind of fits with our community. That there are a lot of people who presumably will live nowadays in Plet and then fly to Johannesburg or even Cape Town for the working week and then go back home to Plet, as an example. Are you going to be focusing more planes there?
So the intention is two things: commercial optimization and increased reach. So everybody can end up with a fuller flight because our aircraft types are so different and such different seating capacities. There's an enormous scope for optimization there. In terms of increased reach, we can utilize their destinations. For now, it's only domestic. In the future, we are hoping to co-chair on the regional and international routes. But we can benefit from their reach and then from ours. So you end up, in the eyes of a customer, with effectively a larger airline mass. Because mostly when people book a ticket, they aren't that passionate about who they're flying with. What they really want to know is that this is going to solve their travel problem. So that improved apparent mass is of great benefit to both parties.
So what does it mean your focus is going to be in future as CemAir? Where are you going to be positioning to grow your market share and your customer base?
So we're going to continue to grow the secondary destinations and the regional destinations. That's where our focus is going to be. Really where our focus is going to move off of is the trunk routes, where there's enormous passenger volumes and the larger aircraft have improved economies of scale over regional aircraft that we operate.
And there wasn't any intention ever of maybe buying one of those or some of those big aircraft? You've got, a couple of dozen planes now in the air?
Yeah, our total aircraft counts in the mid-30s now. We have been considering what they call narrow-body equipment, that class of aircraft. Unfortunately, worldwide, there's such a squeeze on capacity. I saw recently Airbus is 8,700 aircraft on back order. If you buy a new airplane, it delivers in the mid-30s, and Boeing also has a similar problem. So the supply chain issues and just great sales for them mean that there's such a squeeze on equipment. Simply, it's just not a time for anybody to get into a new type. You'll just be overpaying. So our approach is we're waiting for the market to cool a bit. But in the interim, this may replace that as a strategic decision moving forward.
I'm sure there are a number of members of the business community who are listening to that and saying, hang on, if you've got a lot of orders in the pipeline, then it should be an investment opportunity. We've seen Boeing, though, come under a lot of pressure, the Boeing share price. But does the one translate to the other? Are Boeing going to start picking up their heads now, or that share price picking up its head, given what you've told us now about this long number of, or this large order book?
I haven't been watching the Boeing share price, but Boeing certainly is a very solid entity and a very solid product line. Both Boeing and Airbus are increasing capacity, output as far as they can. But the issues they have is that the supply chain is weak. On the Airbus side, they're using a Pratt & Whitney engine that's been incredibly problematic. And I saw recently that 20% of the worldwide fleet operating that engine has been grounded, and that's further put pressure on that market because of poor engine support on that Pratt & Whitney product.
Sure, it's an interesting area. Are you buying the shares, either of them?
Not at this stage.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll take the recommendation from you. But just looking into the future on this partnership with South African Airways, where can it go to? How much further can it develop?
Well, again, if you look at the worldwide model for airline partnerships, there's many rungs on the ladder. One up is what they call a capacity purchase agreement, CPA agreement, very popular in the US, where an airline gets a different airline to operate a route for them and effectively buys the capacity. And then layers above that include equity partnerships. So, in terms of the world model, there's many, many rungs, and we're probably on the second of them. So, we'll see how it goes from here, and we're always open to any opportunity, of course.
There are, though, some who would be saying, hang on a minute, Miles, you are now benefiting from a taxpayer-funded operation. Is that something that bothers you?
Well, the degree to which SAA is tax-funded still is not before us at this point. If anything, we're working to decrease any burden that they might be placing on the taxpayer, because more successful SAA, and this agreement certainly will move in that direction, will be a less burdensome SAA. So the better they do, the quicker that problem gets fixed. And we believe if there's a problem, we're part of the solution.
Let's move on to the international front, because you did touch on that a moment ago. Elon Musk was in the news very briefly, in the airline news anyway, for wanting to buy Ryanair. And then somebody told him, you can't, because Ryanair, which is Irish, is not for sale to a South African, American, Canadian. I think he's got three passports. And you cannot own that. Now, we have an Irish company in South Africa that you've been boxing with that has got 75% contravening South African ownership regulations, or so you claim, and they are the market leader, Fly CemAir. Can you give us an update on what's going on there?
I wish I could give you more. It's been very opaque. There was a finding by both councils, I guess about 18 months ago, that their ownership structure did contravene the Act. Then the councils were changed. It came to a natural end of its term, and a completely different council was appointed. And since then, there's been very little information that's flowed. We are now 5 or 6 years into this ownership structure, which has been shown to be faulty. And again, I don't know of no meaningful challenge to that decision. There are rumors in the industry about various drives to find alternative buyers or shareholders, but at the moment it just seems to be open-ended, which is a disappointing result, because an unregulated industry is ultimately going to be an unhealthy industry, and to have one major player operating effectively to a separate rulebook is astounding.
But there's a sense of irony there, isn't there? A South African wanting to buy an Irish airline, and now an Irish airline owns a South African operation here. So it does seem pretty strange. Two sets of rules.
It does, absolutely. And why no real meaningful action has been taken, I don't know. One can hypothesize. Obviously, South Africa is a place of, with no shortage of corruption. Whether that comes into it, I can't speak to. But ordinarily, you would have expected to see some meaningful action taken, in considering the significant time frame we've been talking about here.
So what's happening at CemAir when you look forward? It's always an interesting area, aviation. We've seen prices change quite significantly over the past few years as the market has transformed. If there were to be a change, say at CemAir, would that affect pricing?
Everything affects pricing ultimately. The South African airline market, as I've described before, is a thing that's destroyed a lot of value over the decades. And I think some of the pricing we see is below cost. I think there was, from CemAir's strategy post-COVID, a scorched earth kind of strategy, where they were hoping their pricing would obliterate the competition, and they had cheap Irish money to back that up. That, considering the time frame, would have to be revisited, I guess. The overall, the pricing in South Africa is very attractive. If you compare it to airline costs, ticket costs elsewhere in the world, South Africa does well. I think that will come under pressure going forward.
You've certainly had your battles in the 20 years that you were celebrating. And I'm sorry I wasn't with you. Was it a good evening?
It was fantastic. You were a miss, but it was fantastic.
Well, I think that if anybody knows the CemAir story, they will also know that it's proof of your resilience. There was an airline that was grounded. In fact, I think that's how we first met each other, when somehow the regulators decided to ground you. You took them to court and you won. But the real story here is that other airlines that had been grounded generally didn't come back again. If you think about One Time or Skywise or Velvet Sky, names that most people have long forgotten, what was it about you that got you through that?
I suppose, tenacity, not one to give up. I often make a joke with people. I say, I'm basically unemployable, so I have to make a go of this. Otherwise, I won't be able to do anything else. But in 20 years, yes, you see a lot of things in any industry, of course. It's a 2008 crash. We had the grounding, and then 5 months after the grounding, we went into the COVID thing. But we have built strong partnerships over the years, and that really is what pulled us through. So all of our partners worked with us to get through COVID and the difficult times, and they understand that the progress isn't made in a straight line, and it's not about a company name; it's about the people behind, and that's what you're really backing. And we've maintained those relationships, and they believe in us, and that's always been a core of what we do. And the SAA decision, I suppose, is an extension of that very philosophy.
It's also interesting when you look back at that darkest hour for you, and now consider that you've got partnerships with South African Airways, and as you said earlier, on the horizon with Emirates. That's almost the stuff of dreams.
Yeah, if you keep on pushing, if you can overcome life's difficulties, you get stronger for it. And that, I guess the result is that you find opportunities, people to recognize it ultimately. And there's very few airlines worldwide the last 20 years. So the fact that we have that builds confidence in itself. I think I mentioned on one of your previous shows, there was a stat put up by the CA, if I remember correctly, that said since deregulation in the early 90s, 32 of 34 airlines that started operating stopped, have become defunct. So the failure rate is horrendously high. And worldwide it's not as bad, but it's still significant. So and people take confidence. They don't like newcomers. You've seen.
Do you think the fact that you're a pilot, that you've actually flown, gave you an advantage there?
Yeah, look, I'm very involved in all aspects of the business, and it is the kind of business that you really have to understand all the dynamics of. For example, aircraft parts are horrendously expensive things, and you need to make sure that you buy them from the right place, the right price, the right time, because just that line item on its own is so significant. Fuel is such a significant thing. Making sure you get the right deal with the right supplier, and buy the right amount at the right location. All of these aspects become extremely important in a low margin game like the airline industry. So being so actively involved, I think, has helped us prevail in some of those dark times that you mentioned.
Being a fighting general, if you need to save a little bit of money, do you get up into an aeroplane and take the flight yourself? I suppose really my question is, when last did you commercially fly?
I am still commercially active. I've kept my license current on one fleet type that we have. I probably fly a handful of times a year, mostly because I enjoy it and it does help connect you with the operation, a portion of the operation that you don't see too much, the ground ops and that sort of thing. The downside is it's extremely time consuming. What looks like a short flight to Bloemfontein and back, you basically burn half a day, and as you can imagine, an operation of our size does require a lot of attention. So that stops me. But flying is still a passion, and you need to be passionate about the industry. It's not an 8 to 5 job. It has to be in your blood for you to make a life of it.
Are there other CEOs of airlines in South Africa, even Africa, who also fly in that way?
I know the former CEO of Airlink, Roger Foster, was a pilot. I don't think he ever flew commercially, but I know he did hold a pilot's license. The others I can't speak to, but I think I might be a little unique in that regard. I mean, the bulk of airlines across the continent tend to have some level of state involvement, and then the hiring process is obviously massively different, and the philosophies are massively different. But I think in other markets like the US, I think historically there have been a few. It's probably relatively rare.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Just before we go, can you give us any more information on the Emirates?
We can. We have an interline arrangement with them. It's also been running for a couple of years, and we're in the testing phase of upgrading that to a co-chair arrangement. So we hope have that across the line in the coming months. I mean, what a fantastic partner as well. To have SAA and Emirates as co-chair partners is just wonderful. Both are iconic airlines. I mean, SAA is almost as old as aviation itself, if you look at it, number of years in the game. And Emirates, global household name. So, very pleased to be moving that one forward.
So does that mean that in perhaps the not too distant future, when I book a flight to London, or I'll be able to book a flight to London through CemAir and maybe fly one leg with you or no legs with you, but get there anyway through your back office?
In the future, yes, that functionality should be available. And yes, we could be a segment of your flight carrying a Emirates code.
Extraordinary. What progress. Miles van der Molen is the founder and chief executive of CemAir. I'm Alec Hogg from biznews.com.